Mr. Carter sat alone in his quiet classroom, the soft hum of the ceiling fan filling the space as the last rays of sunlight streamed through the blinds. It had been a long day, filled with restless students and endless papers to grade, but he didn't mind. Teaching wasn't just his job, it was his purpose. He stayed behind after school, as he often did, preparing lesson plans for students who struggled to keep up. As he gathered his papers, a faint sound reached his ears, a quiet sob, echoing through the empty hallway. He froze for a moment, his instincts as a teacher kicking in immediately. He walked out of the classroom, following the sound until it led him to the stairwell near the back of the building. There on the cold steps sat a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, her tiny shoulders trembling as she cried softly into her hands. Her backpack lay beside her, its contents spilled out. A few pencils, a lunchbox, and a small rain-soaked sketchbook. Mr. Carter's heart softened instantly. He crouched down and said gently, "Hey, sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl quickly wiped her tears, startled by his voice, and shook her head. He sat on the lower step, keeping his voice calm and kind. "It's all right," he said softly. "You can tell me what happened. I promise I won't be mad." The girl hesitated before whispering, "My drawing. It flew away in the rain. It was for my mom." Her voice cracked on the last word. Mr. Carter's expression softened even more. "That's a beautiful thing to do," he said, glancing at the sketchbook. He noticed the pages were wet and smudged, but the little girl's effort was clear. Bright colors, smiling faces, and a big heart drawn in the middle. He stood and offered his hand. "Come on, let's see if we can save it. Together." They gathered the wet pages, spreading them out on a nearby table in the art room. Mr. Carter gently dabbed them with paper towels, careful not to tear the fragile paper. "See?" he said with a smile. "Not so bad. A little rain can't ruin good art." The girl sniffled and smiled faintly. "You really think so?" she asked. "I know so," he replied warmly. "You've got talent. Your mom would have loved this." The girl looked down, her fingers tracing one of the drawings. "She's gone," she whispered. The words hit Mr. Carter like a silent punch. He hesitated before responding softly. "I'm so sorry." He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, offering quiet comfort. She didn't say anything more, just leaned into his side slightly, seeking warmth and safety. For a moment there was silence, only the faint dripping of rain outside and the sound of paper rustling. Mr. Carter didn't speak. Sometimes silence said everything words couldn't. After a few minutes, she gathered her things, carefully placing the sketchbook back into her bag. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice small but steady. "You're really kind." Mr. Carter smiled faintly. "That's what teachers are for," he replied. "Now how about we get you home?" She nodded shyly. Together, they walked down the hallway toward the main doors. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the smell of wet earth and blooming grass. Outside, a sleek black car was parked near the gate. A man in a dark suit stood by the door, watching quietly. The girl's face brightened when she saw the car. "That's my driver," she said softly. Mr. Carter nodded, a little surprised but not wanting to pry. She turned to him, hesitating for a moment before suddenly hugging him around the waist. The unexpected gesture caught him off guard, but he smiled and patted her back gently. "Thank you for helping me," she said. "I'll tell my dad about you." Mr. Carter chuckled. "You don't have to," he said lightly. "Just keep drawing, all right?" She nodded with a grin before running toward the car. As she climbed inside, Mr. Carter waved one last time before heading back inside. He didn't notice the suited man who stood by the car, his gaze fixed on the teacher. The man's expression was unreadable, part curiosity, part emotion. He turned his head slightly toward the back seat, where a man sat quietly looking out the window. The man in the back seat was tall, sharp-featured, dressed in a crisp gray suit. His eyes, however, were tired, haunted even. When the little girl entered the car, she smiled brightly and showed her father the damp sketchbook. "Daddy, look! A nice teacher helped me fix it," she said excitedly. Her father, Ethan Miles, looked at her and then at the sketchbook. The pages were wrinkled, but her happiness was radiant. For the first time in months, he saw his daughter smile. Not a forced one, but a genuine, innocent grin that reached her eyes. His throat tightened. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," he said softly. "What was his name?" "I don't know. she said, thinking for a moment. But he said teachers are supposed to help. He was really nice. Ethan nodded slowly, turning to glance out the window as the car began to move. Through the rain-specked glass, he caught a glimpse of Mr. Carter walking back into the school building, his hands full of papers. For some reason, the sight struck him deeply. He hadn't met the man, hadn't even spoken a word, but somehow that stranger had brought light back into his daughter's world. As the car drove away, Ethan leaned back, his thoughts wandering. It had been a year since he'd lost his wife in a tragic accident. Since then, his daughter had closed herself off, her drawings her only escape. He had tried everything, therapy, travel, toys, but nothing brought her joy. Until now, a kind teacher, a simple act of compassion, had done what wealth and power couldn't. He stared out at the fading school building, silently vowing to find that man again. Meanwhile, Mr. Carter returned to his classroom, unaware of the impact he'd made. He sat back down at his desk, smiling faintly as he glanced at a faded photograph of his own mother, a woman who had taught him that kindness was the truest form of success. He didn't know that his small act that day had changed the course of his life forever. Sometimes fate begins quietly, in a stairwell, in a kind word, or in the simple act of drying a child's tears. The next morning, the sun shone brightly over Boston High as students filled the hallways with laughter and chatter. Mr. Carter walked through the corridor, holding his coffee and a pile of assignments, unaware that something unexpected awaited him. He smiled and greeted students as he passed, his usual routine keeping him grounded. As he entered the teacher's lounge, the school principal, Mrs. Reynolds, approached with a curious smile. "Mr. Carter," she said warmly, "there's someone here asking to see you." He blinked in surprise. "Me? Who would want to see me this early?" She just smiled and gestured toward her office. "You'll see." Inside the principal's office stood a little girl, small, bright-eyed, her backpack neatly zipped. Mr. Carter immediately recognized her. "Hey, it's you," he said, pleasantly surprised. The girl grinned widely. "Hi, Mr. Carter. I told my dad about you," she said with excitement bubbling in her voice. Standing beside her was a tall man in a gray suit, his presence calm yet commanding. He turned around and extended his hand. "I'm Ethan Miles," he said in a deep but gentle tone. "I believe you met my daughter, Lily." Mr. Carter shook his hand, still a bit puzzled. "Ah, yes. Lily's a wonderful kid. I just helped her out after school yesterday." Ethan's expression softened. "She told me everything. I wanted to thank you in person." Mr. Carter smiled modestly. "Oh, you don't have to thank me. She's a good kid. I just did what any teacher would do." Ethan's gaze lingered on him for a moment before he replied, "Maybe, but not everyone would have stopped, especially after hours in the rain." There was a quiet sincerity in his voice that made Mr. Carter pause. Mrs. Reynolds gestured for everyone to sit. "Would you like some coffee?" she offered, trying to ease the formality in the room. Ethan politely declined, his focus still on the teacher who had unknowingly touched his heart. Lily stood beside her father, holding the sketchbook that was now dry but wrinkled from the rain. "Look, Mr. Carter," she said proudly, opening it. "It still looks nice." Mr. Carter leaned down to admire it. "You fixed it perfectly," he said with a warm smile. "Told you good art never fades." Lily giggled, her earlier sadness nowhere to be seen. Ethan watched the interaction quietly, his mind drifting to the night before when his daughter had smiled like that for the first time in months. After a moment, Ethan reached into his briefcase and pulled out an envelope. "I'd like you to have this," he said, sliding it toward Mr. Carter. Confused, he opened it to find a neatly printed letter. It was an invitation to join something called the Bright Futures Foundation. Ethan noticed his puzzled look and explained, "I recently started this foundation in memory of my wife. She was passionate about education and believed teachers are the true architects of society. We're building a program that helps support underfunded schools and gives teachers the resources they deserve." Mr. Carter's eyes widened slightly as he read the letter again. "This is incredible," he murmured. "But why me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because, Mr. Carter, you embody exactly what this foundation stands for. Compassion, patience, and the belief that one act of kindness can change a life." His words carried a weight that silenced the room. Lily tugged at her father's sleeve and added, Daddy said people like you are heroes. Mr. Carter chuckled softly, embarrassed yet touched. Heroes? I'm just a teacher. Ethan nodded. That's exactly what makes you one. Mrs. Reynolds looked both proud and amazed. Mr. Carter, this is a great opportunity, she said. You could make a difference far beyond this school. But Mr. Carter hesitated. I love my students. I'm not sure I'm ready to leave them. Ethan understood the hesitation. You wouldn't have to, he assured. We want you to be part of the program as an advisor, someone who trains and mentors new teachers. You'd still be teaching, just on a bigger scale. Mr. Carter looked down at the letter again, feeling a strange mixture of disbelief and gratitude. He remembered the long nights grading papers, the times he'd bought school supplies with his own money, the countless students who needed not just lessons but hope. Maybe this was a way to do more. You really think I can help? He asked quietly. Ethan smiled with genuine warmth. I don't think so, Mr. Carter. I know you can. Lily's face lit up as she clapped her hands. See, I told you, Daddy. He's the best teacher. Everyone laughed softly, and for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt something lift from his chest. They spent the next hour talking about the foundation, its goals, upcoming projects, and how it would work. Mr. Carter shared his insights about struggling students, overworked teachers, and the small but powerful moments that made education meaningful. Ethan listened intently, taking notes, nodding often. He wasn't just a CEO in that moment, he was a father and a man rediscovering purpose. As the meeting ended, Ethan stood and shook Mr. Carter's hand again. Thank you for helping my daughter yesterday, he said sincerely. You didn't just dry her drawings, you brought her smile back. Mr. Carter's eyes softened. She brought mine back too, he replied. Lily hugged him tightly, whispering, I'll keep drawing just like you said. He smiled, touched beyond words. As they left, Mrs. Reynolds turned to Mr. Carter with a knowing grin. Seems like you made quite the impression. He chuckled and rubbed the back of his neck. Guess kindness travels fast. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Mr. Carter sat at his desk, staring at the letter again. He thought about his modest apartment, his aging car, and the many times he'd doubted whether his work truly mattered. Now he had proof that it did. Sometimes it wasn't grand gestures that changed lives, it was the smallest ones done with a genuine heart. Across town, Ethan Miles tucked Lily into bed. Daddy? She asked sleepily. Do you think Mr. Carter will work with you? Ethan smiled. I think he will, sweetheart. She yawned, clutching her sketchbook. Mom would have liked him, she murmured before drifting off to sleep. Ethan looked at her peaceful face and whispered, Yes, she would have. Days later, Mr. Carter officially joined the Bright Futures Foundation. His classroom remained open, but his reach expanded, training young teachers, improving schools, and inspiring thousands of students he would never even meet. Whenever he saw Lily again, she'd show him a new drawing, each one brighter than the last. And somewhere deep down, he knew that what started as a simple act of kindness in a quiet stairwell had become something extraordinary. A reminder that compassion doesn't just change one life, it can transform many. In the heart of Boston, a humble teacher and a grieving CEO had found healing through one child's tears, and together, they built hope where there had once been loss.